I always do this. Here we go. 3, 2, and 1. What the
News team, assemble!
It's back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and Bob.
All right, we are back. It is the unofficial 40 podcast from Soonerscoop.com. Brought to you by Dead Soxy. We've got all the players here. Josh McCuistion, Eddie Radosevich, Bob Prisbillo, and I am Kerry Murdoch here for another edition of the unofficial 40, where we've had a couple weeks of spring practice to digest now, and we've had the offense and the defense speak. Cale Gundy talked yesterday along with several players, including the quarterback, Dillon Gabriel, and welcome, boys. Welcome to another week of the program. Don't everyone talk at once.
Hello. Don't talk.
That's absolutely the worst, because I'm like, I don't know who should take that. That's never I never know what to do in that moment.
I like being directed.
Eddie has a radio show, so he's always first to the mic. You can tell he's a professional.
He's hungry.
Whereas Josh is just waiting to be asked a question, which is his radio life.
That's my radio life.
Here's
exactly.
my question. Tell us about this now. Talk and I'll shut up. That's like
that's for at least 5 minutes.
I just made you feel at home right there. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's
and we've
exactly
helped
right.
you to
Everybody
not
shut up and listen.
Be such a yell talker over the years, which is good.
But does it? I'd like to know. I think there's some people out there that feel the yell talking constituency of this podcast is underrepresented now. It's just not. There's no one there to back you up, and I still want to be your guy.
I guarantee you, when you get onto just a phone and holding it up to your face, you're yell talking all the time, aren't you?
I probably once did. This podcast has made me a little more mindful of that stuff. Like, I really tried not to be too close to the phone when I talk. I'm usually one of those people, because you guys know how it is. Like, we work from home, so you can usually be on your phone, have it on speaker, and just kind of have the conversation. So that I'm not screaming in somebody's ear.
I know where the yell talking came from. It came from the fact that you were always driving. You're always going to a camp or seeing a kid or going to a school or something, and that's when you would usually do your phone calls. And because you're on the road, you're just screaming into your phone all the time.
And the funny thing is, like, I get a lot of people that, that will ask me about that, listen to the pod or whatever. My hearing is very good, like very, very good. Like, it's probably my strongest sense. And people are like, really? I would have thought like maybe it was like a hearing thing. And I'm like, no, I just talk loud. I don't have any good answer for that. But now we've talked about my speech for a while. So everybody's pulled into the podcast. Very excited.
It's been an exciting couple of weeks with spring football back and going. Brent Venables finally getting on the field with the team, and we said from the beginning that's what we needed. We needed Brent Venables to get on the field. We needed him to take ownership of this team and move past the former coach era that is there, and now it's underway. It's happening, and we usually start with Bob when it goes to on the field stuff. Let's start with Eddie, because you've been out there shooting every day that you've been allowed. Just kind of your initially kind of what stood out to you most about just watching this team, whether it be the offense or the defensive side or just the coaches.
Well, I mean, I think the first thing that we got to say is just how welcoming it's been. Just being out there for 40 minutes, 3 times was unbelievable. Even the third time, by the end of the third practice that we were out at the fields and stuff, is like, I think I have enough. Like, I don't know what else to shoot. So that's been pretty awesome. But, it's kind of interesting. Like, we haven't been able to see like a whole lot. It's funny just as far as like what we have seen. It's very noticeable that special teams are quite important to this new staff, just in terms of stuff that they continually go over. Now, it's hard to like say that they never worked on special teams a year ago because we didn't see it, but it also like kind of goes hand in hand with there's a lot of stuff that they're installing for the first time as well. So, I think that that's probably stuck out to me. Just overall, it's not necessarily people that have stuck out to me or players that have stuck out to me. But, like somebody like a Jaden Gibson, it's like, yeah, you don't miss him when you're looking at the wide receivers. Lebby seems like he is very, I don't know, like talkative would be the right way to say it, Bob. It's just like he's always talking, almost.
He's vocal.
Like
yes,
always coaching, always yelling at somebody. And not yelling more so than just like, it seems like there's a
He's
lot of
in command of his group.
Yes, that's a great way to say it. And then, I think just from the interview aspect of everything, after we leave practice, it's just kind of a continuation of what we've been saying for a couple of weeks, just in terms of being able to talk to some of the members of the defense on Monday this week, being able to talk to some of the guys Wednesday for the first time, just an overall acceptance of the new staff and kind of the new ideologies. And almost in terms of especially the defensive side of the ball, just stuff that I think that it's kind of like when you sign up for something and then you go and it's like, well, that's not really what I expected it to be. Like talking to Danny Stutzman on Monday, it's almost like there's a lot of stuff that has been instilled in the culture of playing football at Oklahoma that maybe this group like always kind of yearned for almost. Like they wanted the coaches to be a little bit tougher in some aspects of preparation for the season. So I don't know. It's all roses right now. It's easy to say that they love it. And, there hasn't been any adversity to really kind of test them. But I think just like the overall, I don't know, just the general tone of everybody being so accepting and everything being just so kind of rosy, great, perfect right now has been a little bit, I don't know, not to say that it's not surprising, because on the flip side of that, I don't think that anybody's going to sit here as they get in the first 2 weeks of spring football and say, yeah, this sucks. We hate the new coaches. But it's almost like, and Bob, you've used this phrase before, it's genuine. I genuinely feel like they feel like this thing is moving in the right direction. And when you see some of the comments from some of the veteran guys, and, Braden Willis has been rather outspoken about it on Twitter, it feels like they feel like they're in a really good spot with this new staff, even though that they really haven't, accomplished anything per se on the football field yet.
Yeah, it was good to talk to some offensive guys with Eric Gray and Marvin Mims. And, I won't say I grilled Gray, but I was pretty, forthcoming. Like, you got to feel like last year wasn't your year. Like, that wasn't what you came here for. And I thought he did a pretty good job of answering the question about, how it's an obstacle, opportunity. Now it's a chance for him to try to get better. And I was like, you transfer here to play in Lincoln's offense, and then he bolts. You start getting buyer's remorse. You start second guessing. And then that led into his relationship with DeMarco Murray and how crucial that's been. And then we flipped it Marvin Mims, and you could tell that weighed on Mims. Like, that was a very thoughtful, in-depth answer that you can tell had a lot of meaning to him about how rough 2021 was and how excited he is about what's here and about that process during, that 2-3 week of just pure coaching chaos, guys walking out the door, guys coming into the door, and trying to figure out where he fit in the grand scheme of things.
I mean, somebody put it on the board on the thread that we posted the video of, but like, he truly seems like a happier person. And we've kind of talked about this, but it's just so different being able to talk to these guys in person because you get a good feel for just kind of their aura around him. Like, it dawned on me when we were done with Marvin yesterday. It's like, that's literally the first time we've ever interviewed him in person. It just seems like he is so much happier than maybe he was a year ago. And, obviously that's been well documented, but I mean, that guy's out of there if the old staff is back. There's no doubt in my mind.
And I would say this, I think one of my favorite parts of the last 2 weeks is Brent Venables on Monday, just getting to answer questions about football, not having to talk about big picture stuff, not having to, really kind of set the foundation of what he's doing with every sentence that he puts out there, but just to be asked like, hey, what about your linebackers? What about this guy? What about that guy? Like, I was glad to finally get to see him. What about Billy Bowman? Like, get him talk about individual players was great. I mean, I really enjoyed that part of it.
I enjoyed getting to talk to Billy about last year and how Brent kind of echoed what we thought. Like, if you're trying to play him in 3 different spots, he's going to know a little bit about all 3, but not be able to master any of them and not really be able to help your team going forward. And you sort of heard that from Brent saying, you do too much too soon like that, you have that possibility of ruining a kid before you even got a chance to get him to really get going. And Billy just focusing on safety, you can tell that he's re-energized. Obviously, he wants to play special teams. I don't know if he'll be a part of the kickoff return. We have always seen him be working on punt return, but you can tell he wants the ball in his hands. He wants to turn the page from what felt like a disappointing, definitely back half of the season, and show people, why everyone was so excited that he signed in the first place.
Well, and really, a lot of people kind of wondering, you have coaches going in and out. It's kind of a time for fans to kind of, like Jeffrey Johnson has come in, Trey Morrison has come in, and getting a chance to kind of hear from those guys and hear coaches talk about those guys. It's almost like, he's got some new guys that could really help out. That's kind of been a little bit, I'm sure a lot of fans have been a little, I don't know, not surprised, but just it's interesting kind of seeing, these names pop up that it's not like a recruit. It's not like a guy that's like, can a Jaden Gibson become a difference maker? And of course, Cale Gundy talked glowingly about him yesterday, but you see these transfers and now it kind of puts you in a different mindset. Like, there are some guys that could make some instant impacts on this team. And what are those guys about?
It's almost like it was more intentional than maybe I realized at the time in terms of guys that they went after out of the portal. And it's something that Brent has brought up. I think he brought it up on the day of signing day, just as far as there's a lot of guys that have played a lot of football, especially in this transfer portal group, that not only have played a lot of football, but were big parts of their team, whether it be a captain like a Jeffrey Johnson coming in from Tulane, or, even all the way down to a TD Roof, a guy that was a captain on his football team a year ago. They're guys that have been able to step into a locker room that probably it's not the easiest thing. I can't think. And, there's probably nobody better than that than Dillon Gabriel, just as far as the way that he not only has stepped in and kind of been an added coach on the field and knowing the offense and knowing what they want to do tempo wise, but, it was something that Theo Weiss talked about, that Marvin talked about, Drake has talked about, even Andrew Ram has talked about, particularly guys on the offensive side of the ball that, from day one, he stepped in and was like, hey, let's go throw. Let's get a group together. Let's go do something. Let's go eat together. If it's the offensive lineman, I think Ram talked about it. It's so seamless. I've been a little surprised how easy it's been, but I guess at the same time, like having listened to or talked to Dillon for the first time yesterday, he's very and I know it's kind of cliche, but he is very just chill, very kind of laid back, it seems. And maybe even a little bit almost naive as far as the demand or the expectation that it is to be the quarterback at Oklahoma. And I don't necessarily, that's not a bad thing. I don't think it's almost like he's a little bit blind to how bright that light is. And, if he can handle it, somebody like a Baker and somebody like a Kyler, they'd obviously, I guess, kind of ease their way into that as opposed to Dillon, who's going to be thrown into it. But I mean, it can be a lot. And at times I think that's what Spencer Rattler kind of got himself into trouble with, was that spot and that moment was almost a little too bright.
That's a really interesting point, Eddie. Like, he's not carrying that burden of expectation, right. I've got to be this because those guys were that, that's right. That's an interesting way that I hadn't thought of looking at it before. But I think you're right. Like, I think there is some advantage to not being in the shadow of it his whole career, his whole, college experience.
like growing up in Hawaii, it's like I don't think that, like, as opposed to somebody that might have grown up around this area, and I'm not saying, like, I completely think that Dillon Gabriel understands the demand that it's going to be the quarterback at Oklahoma, but maybe just wired a little bit differently in that. And I don't know. We kind of talked about this morning. It's like, and it seemed like the moment never got to Jocelyn Allo as far as too much pressure. And of course she wasn't seeing pitches, and it's a little bit different, but maybe like you're just kind of wired differently growing up in Hawaii, I think. And I don't know, maybe I'm trying to read too much into that, but it kind of stuck out to me yesterday.
I wonder if there's anything. I wonder if there's anything to be said for. It's been a few years. I mean, like, we all think of Oklahoma quarterback play as, oh, it's elite, guys. I mean, as Jalen Hurts was 3 years ago now, and even that by Oklahoma standards wasn't some unbelievable year. I mean, we all talked about through that year there were plenty of warts through that season. There were problems there. So I mean, as long as Dillon Gabriel has been in college football, there hasn't been any point in time when Oklahoma had the quarterback in the sport. Like, that wasn't the guy. And I wonder if that takes some of that away. He's not having to live up to Baker Mayfield or, Kyler Murray. He's having to be, be better than Spencer Rattler was last year, which is not asking a lot.
Hell, be better than Caleb Williams was.
Yeah,
outside of Texas. The Kansas game was bad. The Baylor game was bad. The Oklahoma State game was bad.
That's the thing. Like, for all the bright spots of Caleb, again, it's not like he set some unreachable bar for a quarterback, especially one who's had as much success as Dillon Gabriel. That's the thing. I don't think people look around. You look around college football, there's not a lot of quarterbacks coming back that you say, oh, yeah, that guy's a dude. That guy's a dude. There's a lot of turnover this year. And Dillon Gabriel is one of the more accomplished quarterbacks around college football. It's crazy to think that kind of fell into Oklahoma's lap, but that's the reality.
I just want to know.
Just knowing the offense, too, I think has been.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. It can't be
having
understated.
Somebody that knows exactly the language that Lebby's talking, and especially at the tempo that they want to go. I'm not saying that Dillon Gabriel was going to start in front of anybody that, might have returned to this team, but it is kind of interesting. Like, he's out there being able to, like, say, and Marvin talked about this a little bit as far as just like, you need to be here on, this player, this route or whatever. You need to run it like this. And, I think that little shit like that goes such a long way when you're putting in an offense in the spring like they are.
I just want to know if we can use the power of the unofficial 40 to convince Norman restaurants to start carrying, is it Loco Moco on the menu?
I'm so unfamiliar with Hawaiian culinary.
I watch so much diners, drive-ins, and dives that
I just don't think I like it.
He
That's
goes
my
to
problem.
Hawaii. Loco Moco is just like hamburger with gravy and rice. Now the poke stuff, the raw tuna, like in seaweed and stuff. I went to that. What's the Southwest place, the fancy place up in Oklahoma City off 23rd? Frida. And I tried the tuna tartare because my buddy that I went with got that for his appetizer. And it was everything I could do to chew the bite and swallow it without spitting it out.
Just the texture is what got you?
Yes. And that place was great. The rest of Frida is great. Like, I don't want to say that the restaurant sucks, but
right.
It was just, that was the first time I'd ever tried tuna tartare. I thought, I got to the age where I'm like, I never turn anything down. I want to try everything. And it was just like, they gave you these nice big thick tortilla chips. And so I scooped up the big old bunch of it. And then as I started chewing, I was like, this is weird. And it never stopped getting weird. And with every chew, it was like, this is weirder. Okay, it's even weird. And it's like, how am I going to finish it? And I just grinned and bared it and chewed it and swallowed it. And that was the last time I'll ever have tuna tartare.
It was.
Have you ever had any other tartare like stuff?
That will be the last time I have any tartare.
Okay.
I've never had steak tartare or anything like that. I could probably, like, the texture of steak would be much better than tuna.
Yeah. I've never had tuna tartare. I've had beef that was awesome a long time ago. I was like, this is going to be gross. I was not expecting to be into it, but I'm with you. Like, I'm one of those people like, I'll try anything once. And I was like, I'll take a bite. And then me and my buddy just destroyed it after that. Like, it was a group of guys, and it was two of us that clearly liked it more than the rest, and we just wrecked that thing.
It would have been better if I'd been drinking, probably. I probably could have handled the texture, and I would have probably focused more on the flavors and stuff like that. But unfortunately, I was stone cold sober, and it just did not go well. Yeah.
I was doing a lot of drinking at the time. It was a bachelor party, so we were.
It's kind of like I've never been a smoker, but if I've been out at karaoke and just hammered, and you give me a cigarette, I will smoke it like a pro. Like, I will take that down into the chest and bring it all the way back up.
Oh,
but
no.
Otherwise, I can't. I would choke to death if I did that sober.
Interesting.
Sorry, Eddie.
Noted. Interesting and noted.
I'm sorry to the smoking community for disappointing you.
But I mean, at least if you're drinking with Carrie, he's not going to let that cigarette go to waste, Eddie. He's actually going to breathe it in. He's going to take that sucker in. Yeah, I am going to waste the cigarette. I'm doing it strictly because I have had too much to drink and I don't know what else to do with myself.
With inflation nowadays, that's like a $4 decision.
Yeah, that syntax has got to be rough on the cigarettes.
I don't buy them anymore. I don't do that. So
there you go, Mom. You heard it here. He would never lie to you.
Well, obviously. And most of the time it's just a prop in the videos that I'm making anyways. It's not even real. It's
a
fake.
lit prop.
The interesting thing that I thought
CGI.
was kind of funny that Dillon Gabriel was talking about was the Red Rock comment and going to get the salmon, because it was like, of course he's trying to go find seafood somewhere.
In Oklahoma, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a tough break. It's one of those things that growing up in Oklahoma, I was like, oh, you guys are whatever. That's stupid. I literally live, I can get fresh, anything within 15 minutes from my house.
You're like riding a Gulf, basically.
Yes. I'm not just in Houston. I'm over on that side of town. I am very close to the ocean, and you're just, there's a difference. There just is. No, I mean, again, when you live this close to James Harden's old house, you're going to have nice things. I mean, let's just be real. But no, I mean, we're close, and the stuff you can get there's a difference. There's just no question. I don't go back to Oklahoma and think, you know what I need? I need some seafood. It's just, it's not that I didn't like it when I lived there. I was fine with it. I'm not a snob about it. It's just, that's not what I go back to Oklahoma to have.
What was the place over by Lake Hefner that was open? God, I want to say I would have been in middle school and high school when it was open. Bahama Breeze. Not Bahama Breeze. Wasn't it something Breeze that was
yes. What was that?
I think it was Bahama Breeze.
It is Bahama Breeze.
Breeze?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh,
they're going to need to open something like that back up in Norman, or the building that's always been empty that people have always rumored that it's going to be something over off Ed Noble. That needs to be like Dillon Gabriel's seafood place, and they just need to open it while his time in Norman.
Just a poke lounge?
But just for him. Just a lounge for him.
We could be setting up his NIL deal now. He could be the front for some sort of seafood company.
Yeah.
Or restaurant that opens in Norman.
When he was talking about the restaurants that he liked, you could tell the gears were moving. I need to be careful about this, because in case there's somebody that does want to sign me to an NIL deal, I don't want to make anybody mad.
I love Cane's Chicken.
I think Rahm said that they've come up to Oklahoma City a couple times. I think he said Ned's, which is an awesome restaurant off of May Avenue up here. So. Owned by a Panther, so shameless plug.
Every time I go back to Oklahoma City, I will say that is the food options in Oklahoma City are so much better than they were when I lived there 10 years ago. It blows my mind. Every time I go somewhere new, I'm like, God, that's great. That's great. And I don't know any of the names. I'd love to give them plugs, but I've been there once, usually while drinking, and I don't remember them very well, but there's so much better food in Oklahoma City. I don't think people from outside realize it.
As much as we love Spaghetti Warehouse downtown, there's there's a couple more options to go to when you come to Oklahoma City.
No, I've had that discussion with friends lately, like that don't live in Oklahoma anymore and haven't for a long time, and they're like, "What happened to Spaghetti Warehouse? Like, how could it close?" And I was like, "You remember a different version of Spaghetti Warehouse than it actually was. Like, it was so average and below average for Italian food. Like, it's just because it was the only thing that was in Bricktown. I mean, there was O'Brien's in the brewery, and maybe Tapworks. Maybe that was the only, like, those were the staples of Bricktown. That was all you could get. Like, Spaghetti Warehouse was god-awful. It was terrible. Like, even compared to by Olive Garden standards, it was bad.
Oh wow! I'm not gonna go that bad on the slander. You know, there's
you talking shit on Olive Garden because we got a problem if you are.
I'm not shitting on Olive Garden.
Okay.
I mean, do you just go for the breadsticks and then whatever else happens?
Gabriel is really good in Oklahoma City. They just moved to Edmond though. It was like in the old County Line building.
I mean, we got a good Norman. We got Benvenuti's, we got Volare, we got Sergio's.
Benvenuti's is excellent.
Yeah.
I can't wait. Like when the office, when we're like working out of it, like just getting some of the Norman delicacies back in my life is going to be amazing.
Just a constant stream of DoorDash coming to the office.
Well, not really, because I'm dieting, but
yeah, I got to get a closet for your special foods probably.
Still going strong. Sorry, I had some derailed the segment.
I had some beef stew the other night when I woke up in the middle of the night and I was starving.
The what?
The beef stew. Oh. Excellent.
I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad. It really isn't.
Okay, so back to the football. We chalked to offense on Wednesday, defense on Monday. We got to talk to Miguel Chavis. We mentioned Cale Gundy, but you guys kind of talked about it. But Brent on the practice field, he's been all over the place, but kind of like we predicted, like you're not going to be able to keep him away from the linebackers, and that was kind of something that you guys saw on Monday.
Yeah, and not even as during practice, but just going through the stretching lines. He had something to say to Shane Witter and Danny Stutzman going through the stretching lines, and then as practice begins, he drifts his way toward that area time and time again, and I don't think anyone has a problem with it, and it's completely natural, and you can tell that those guys really enjoy it, and I think that gets them excited when Brent is around watching them work.
And people don't know this, but or some people might know this, but like during practices when Bob was the head coach, he was always around the secondary, which is what he coached as an assistant. So, I mean, it's just natural. You got to be somewhere. You can't just keep going from place to place. You got to let Jeff Lebby do what he does on the offensive side. So you're not always glued to the hip of the offensive coordinator or the defensive coordinator. So, I mean, it's just natural. It's not weird for Brent Venables to be, with the linebackers for the majority of practice because that's what he's always known. So I know that wasn't a question.
I did think it was funny that like everybody thought that Brent was like yelling at Ted Roof in the videos that were out there, but it's just like the music's so loud, he's just kind of having to yell, and I think that's how a lot of those guys just communicate.
That's why there's the microphone.
Yeah, the microphone. It's funny. I guess in terms of just sticking with Monday and the defensive side of the football, it's like I think that everybody that has seen the first couple of press conferences that we've been able to talk to Miguel Chavis, it is maybe even more than evident that like there's a reason why there's so much belief in why that guy not only is going to be a good communicator, as far as the recruiting world goes, you can tell how he would relate to somebody and be able to kind of talk with a high school student. But, I think just looking at how he coaches, you can tell that he's getting his point across. He's going to be able to communicate what he needs to be as far as a defensive ends coach. It's kind of fun. It's not, I guess it doesn't hurt that he has a big chaw in his mouth as well. Second on the team in and Shaw look behind Bill Beatembo.
Also, watches film with his wife at home every night, which I found interesting.
Yes, that was
what
awesome.
a keeper. What a keeper.
Was there a follow-up to that comment? Like, somebody asked about that, right?
No, because he was explaining about Jonah.
I know, but like, when he said it, I was like, surely someone's going to ask him about.
He was asked a very open-ended
wife.
question, just about attention to detail or something. He just went
Still
into
in the
that.
Get to know you stage. I think that'll come in time.
Okay, I mean,
because we're still doing coaches in podium setting, which isn't ideal for that type of stuff.
For the shout, the shout out almost.
You know, and I will say the only thing I it's a belief of mine. If everyone asked a great question, no one asked a great question. I think that is a firm policy. That was the thing I noticed from his interview. I was like, oh, the first one, that's really nice. And then you're like 7 questions in, and you're like, not everybody was that on point.
Oh, you mean him saying, "Oh, great question"?
Yes,
before he answered.
He said,
question.
"He's like, great question, great. Like that was a great question." I'm like, if everyone did it, then it wasn't that. You know, it's kind of if everybody's special.
I want you to show up at the next press conference and say, "Look, these are not participation trophies. You've got to decide if it's a great question or not. Stop.
If you're going to gold star me, sir,
stop sugarcoating our questions."
Mm-hmm. But I love his answers. Like, I don't want it to be that way at all.
He also had never gone through this process because he was never an on-field assistant.
100%.
Josh, do you ever break down recruiting film with Tiffany and get her take?
No, I've said it before, though. Tiffany likes the NFL Combine, particularly offensive line day, and I kid you not, she has a good eye for it. Like, she'll watch a guy move, and she's like, he's pretty good. Who is he? And I'm like, that's the, number 2 tackle in the whole class. Like, that's the guy. He's going to go top 10. And she'll be like, oh, I don't like him. And it's some guy, journeyman from, nowhere, Division II. Like, I'm not saying she can recognize, like, oh, he's like a good football player, but she can, like, good feet, stuff like that. She sees it. Like, she really does have a good eye for it.
Well, maybe you'd have a better marriage if you'd break down film with her.
Maybe
we all would.
Whatever,
well, if we're married.
Whatever would save it, I mean, she puts up with a lot, so that's reasonable.
Hey, time for a little timeout for Dead Soxy. If you have not been to deadsoxy.com and checked out their Oklahoma collection, then what the hell is wrong with you? Go to deadsoxy.com. They've got great sales right now going on. The Norman Mix 4-pack bundle's got the new retro sock in it. They've got the 8-packs of the Boomer Crimson 8-pack, $125. Gives you 8 great socks to wear throughout the season. And they are fantastic socks. They've got the non-slip beads in the sock, which just keep them up the entire time that you're wearing them. Very comfortable. The fabric is just unbelievable in these things. Deadsoxy.com, DEADSOXY.com. And if you want to just pick up like some State and Stripes or the Maker Bayfields, you get the big statue unveiling coming up. Going to want to have those socks on when you go to the spring game on August the 23rd. So go to deadsoxy.com, use that promo code BOOMER, and you'll get 25% off of your order. That's promo code BOOMER, and 25% off your order. That's only at deadsoxy.com. The Oklahoma collection, go check it out, DEADSOXY.com. And as always, stay Soxy. So, I mean, outside of that, guys, just players. I mean, you talked about Dillon Gabriel. I know you talked a little bit about Billy Bowman, but kind of what else really stood out to you in just particular players? I mean, whether it was, talking to Trey Morrison or whoever this week.
It's funny with Trey because he sees a lot of Billy in him because of the fact that, of course, Trey moved all over the place at North Carolina. So he's excited to watch what Bowman can become. But, I mean, it's funny getting the perspective of defensive players, how fired up they are about having a defensive-minded head coach. And then offensive players not really, not being mad about, not being upset about it, and kind of excited to see what kind of dynamic that's going to bring since they've known OU's about offense for years and years. And that's what they learned since they've been there. It's what they learned going through the recruiting process. And now that it's flipped, I'm not saying like it takes the pressure off, but it still seems like those guys are sort of embracing a different role that comes along with Brent being so known for what he does with defense.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I feel like I keep harping on the same ideas, but like even talking to somebody like a Reggie Grimes that has been around the block, I would say, even Stutzman to a certain extent, being that he's only been there for a year, but you get a good feel for what's going on, and it's just like what was the problems? And I don't want to harp on like what were the problems a year ago, but it's just everybody seems so refreshed as far as what has come in. And I don't know like where I'm at as far as like, I believe them. I don't think that they're just saying it to be saying it, but there is like a genuine feeling of like what has this group done that the other didn't? Like,
what did the other group do?
Well, I think
exactly.
I think it might even be as much as just it was always going to be hard to move on from the Mike Stoops era because you still had half the coaching staff there, and they still were kind of scarred by those defensive performances, and it was always about turning it around. Like, this is just a completely blank slate now.
Yeah.
And everyone can just say, okay, these guys are defensive guys versus these guys are here to try and make us a defense again. Like, now it's just everything it's just like with recruiting, Josh. It's like the former staff, no matter how many strides they would have made, they were not going to be able to get in on this many big-time defensive guys because their reputation preceded them. I mean, it was, what have you done in the past to make us believe that we can be this in the future? It was like, we don't know. We don't really have a belief that this is going to turn around. With Brent Venables and this staff, it's like, well, they have the track record. No one else has had this track record that's been at Oklahoma.
Something on paper that says, this is what we do. This is what it looks like. This is where we want to be.
Yes.
Guys, they this morning made the Final Four for a top 50 defensive lineman from the state of Alabama, whose other three are Alabama, Clemson, and Florida. There's no way in hell they're on that list without Todd Bates, Brent Venables, the whole, that's just not going to happen. Now, I don't want to delude anybody about Peter Woods. OU's almost certainly not going to get him. But it's being in those conversations, that's a place to start from. And then you try to get some of these other guys, like David Hicks. It's a little more regional. Jordan Renaud, like all those become possible. But just being on this list makes other guys, maybe younger guys, take Oklahoma more seriously and be like, well, okay, that dude's legit. He's super real. He's got offers from everybody. Why is he looking at Oklahoma? Maybe I should do the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sea change. I mean, it is not just a fix. It is a complete, they tore the house down and rebuilt it. They didn't renovate. And I think you sense that from the players as you're talking about.
Oh yeah, when I'm looking at the people, because one of the favorite questions in board chat will be, well, how many Rivals 100 guys are they going to land? How many Rivals 250 guys are they going to land? And as I sit there and kind of lay it out, and obviously a lot of it's guesswork at this early point, but as I look at it and I wager, what are the most likely possibilities? It's night and day. Last year it would have been, okay, they're real for 15 offensive guys and 3 or 4 defensive guys. It's not that stark, but it's flipped. It's 12 defensive guys and 7 offensive guys. Like it's just very different. And Oklahoma has a chance with not just the 175 safety from Dallas or that. I mean, they can go anywhere in the country and recruit elite defenders right now. Like they can have a shot with almost anyone. Now, will they land them? That's what we've got to see. But the door is open to anywhere they want to go for any defensive player.
So,
and I guess, and they don't have to. They're not like settling on offense either. Like it's not like offense is falling apart.
No,
where it felt before, offense was legit, but you didn't know about defense. Here, you're making defense legit. Oh, but offense is right there with it. There should be no discernible drop off that makes you think, oh man, this is not going to be what we've seen the last 4 or 5 years, and that's course, that's why everyone is so excited about what they can do on each side of the ball here going forward.
That's a great point. I mean, you have a totally different if you want to. I don't want to call it the weak link because that's not the way that I guess you would say national perception perceives this team under Brent Venables is a defensively driven team, and under Lincoln Riley, obviously it was the complete opposite. Under Lincoln Riley, the defense was overcome. Like, just be good enough to where the offense can drag you to the finish line. And under Venables, offensively in recruiting, that's not what it looks like. That does not look like that will be a problem. They have, I mean, and part of it is they kept a really good offensive staff in place, added a few good pieces, and are moving forward. But I mean, Jeff Lebby, and it's only going to grow after this NFL draft when Matt Corral ends up a first-round pick. He's only going to be able to tout that to more guys and more people will believe in him. And, we can get into me seeing Jackson Arnold this weekend, but talking to his parents and how quickly that all came together, I mean, he's clearly a guy that can recruit very well. I mean, he resonated with them very, very quickly.
Well, there's a certain element of the Jeff Lebby thing too that, and I know that we'll talk about Jackson Arnold too, but I like just what he's brought as far as, you listen to the comments that Cale made yesterday on Wednesday when he was talking to us. And, those were kind of the most notable comments to come from a coach so far. And, Cale's been adamant that he's as excited as he's ever been about Oklahoma football. He said that on the podium many times during the transition to power. And, he's been around this thing for as long as anybody down there.
And he called Jeff Lebby as well-rounded an offensive mind he's ever been around, for those that didn't hear it or read it yet.
Well, and that was kind of the quote that everybody saw yesterday, just about Lincoln Riley versus Jeff Lebby. And I know Cale would not want to make it out like he was saying anything negative about Lincoln Riley, but mentioning that it took him some time to come around to the type of running game that they use at Oklahoma. And that was no secret at the time. I mean, that first year against Texas and that loss when Baker was sacked like it seemed like 800 times and they just did not run the ball. And I remember that was the first time when we kind of got, sorry, Eddie, not trying to pull at any strings here, but that was the first time I remember hearing from fans like Lincoln Riley blocked me because I told him to run the ball after that game. And it was always, kind of a sensitive subject about how much he would run the ball. I mean, he started leaning on Rodney Anderson. Remember later that year was the Kansas State when Bob almost got killed on the sideline. He kind of figured it out and started, figuring out his way. But, I mean, Jeff Lebby's I don't think he's going to have that issue where you wonder, will he run the ball enough in this offense?
And that's why everyone's so fired up about what Marcus Major can do, because you think this is the perfect style for him. And I asked Eric Gray about Major, and when you hear, how much it sounds like Major's matured on and off the field, and you put him in this type of system, this should be a guy that really takes off. I know we're going to say that about a lot of people, just be expecting them to make that next leap, that next step. But there's no doubt that if it's not this season for Marcus Major, then it's just never going to happen.
Do you think that as a whole we've maybe overlooked just, we always talk about Marcus Major in this offense, but has it been actually Eric Gray that maybe we've overlooked in how, I think in a way like disappointing he was a year ago?
He just wasn't good between the tackles. I mean, that was his biggest thing. I mean, he had a role in the offense, which was to get the ball to him out in space, and he was great. But he just did not run the ball well between the tackles. That was the biggest problem. And I'm not saying, anyone really did, but it was striking the difference between he and Kennedy Brooks as interior runners.
Guys, with the questions they have at receiver, and I think the questions, like Kerry just brought up, about how Eric Gray fits what this offense does, I think it would be really interesting to see him flexed out into some slot stuff. Like, you could break the huddle with two backs and then put him in motion, put him in the slot, let him – because you get that guy the ball in space, he's dangerous. I mean, there are a lot of good uses for Eric Gray, even in this offense, but I would be interested to see if they got a little creative in how they get him 10, 15 touches a game.
The wide receiver position is kind of fun to talk about. And, again, just kind of banking back on what Marvin was saying yesterday, just as far as like the names that are there, and particularly that first grouping of guys, when you think about the inside with Marvin Mims and Drake Stoops, and then on the outside with Theo Weiss and Jalil Farouk, it's like those are four guys that just right now on paper, you think like, even though they haven't done it per se in games, but there's a lot to like there. I mean, Jalil Farouk flashed. I think that a lot of people feel like it's just a matter of time. Hopefully he stays healthy with Theo, but they're kind of known quantities in what you're getting with Marvin Mims and Drake. I don't know. It's like I'm excited to see how it all comes together, because you would think that those four guys, and then, maybe you do get a Jaden Gibson that is somebody that could end up being a guy as a freshman. What's Cody Jackson going to give you? We still don't know what he's really all about, given that he had the health scare a year ago. I just like, they have able bodies. And I think that that's what's kind of fun about the, I guess, blank slate or the new offenses. There is just so much unknown because you don't know what it's going to necessarily look like.
Was it the thing about Jeff Lebby's offense, was it the first year that Jalen Robinson was at UCF when he became such a star for them after the transfer from OU?
Let's see. He was a class of 2018 guy. So he would have had to sit out the 2019 season.
Yeah, I want to say it was 2020 when he
2020 would have been his year when Lebby's at Ole Miss.
Yeah, he had 979. He had 55 for 979 in 2020.
Yeah.
And then
he would have sit out 2019.
He got injured in 21 last year, didn't he?
Yeah.
It just seems like it's been so long since the Baker and Kyler days where you could consistently expect a big passing play in the offense. I mean, like, that was part of the problem with Rattler, is that he was always trying to force a deep ball. But the more they kept dropping guys into coverage, the less chances you saw of Oklahoma quarterbacks kind of completing those deep passes, to the point, like when we saw Mike Woods at the Combine and he caught that really deep ball, I was like, wow, you never saw him run anything close to that as far as a deep route while he was at Oklahoma. I know that wasn't particularly his job, but just being able to see the offense get vertical again with that running game, if you're 50, 60, 40, which is about what Jeff Lebby is, I got to think that that's something that we're going to start seeing on Owen Field again with this receiving crew, and Theo Weiss in particular.
I think a lot of this is just predicated on what you're going to get up front from a bunch of those guys. Like, what kind of offensive line is going to come together here over the next 4 months? And if you're good, if they make a step, which I think a lot of people think that they will, even with the questions, they can be a really good offense. Like, there's no doubt about that.
That's why we'll wait till the last week of spring to ask Bill Beatenbow. It's hard to, like, we talked to Rame last week, and that was nice, but there's no one among that group that feels like they should have the pulse of the rest of the guys and can give a clear indication of what's going on. So we'll give it a couple more weeks. We'll get Bill Beatenbow, and we'll kind of see where we stand as we head into the spring game.
And Bill is a guy he's not afraid to try a lot of different guys, but he's also kind of a guy that when he finds that set that he kind of believes in, he sticks with it until it just doesn't work. So I think he'll have a pretty good idea of who his line is, at least, the top 6 coming out of spring. Now, the question is that Savion Byrd? Is that Wanye Morris? Is that Anton Harrison? Who is that guy that really stands out attack? And like you guys have pointed out, like Marcus Hicks looks really good. like just
Marcus
standing
Sisk
there.
Great. Marcus Sisk looks really good, as well as, and I think everybody that follows him on Instagram, Savion Byrd physically looks amazing.
Yeah.
And, can Wanye figure it out? Like, that's still just like one of the biggest question marks about, hopefully at some point, maybe we'll get to talk to him. I guess technically he played last year. So I don't know.
Well, he played at Tennessee.
Did he look kind of noticeably lighter to you guys out there, Wanye? Did you get a good look at him?
Mm-hmm.
Little bit. I just don't know.
Not so frumpy.
Why didn't he play? Like, I still don't understand.
Yeah. Considering that he played at Tennessee and was really good.
Yeah.
Like, how does he not play last year? That still remains a mystery.
Yeah.
But I mean,
we could go super conspiracy and say, how like people were saying that the PGA Tour suspended Phil. Was Wanye actually suspended by the NCAA last year for the missteps with the McDonald's bags back in Knoxville, and nobody knew about it?
Well, I mean, I do know that there were some academic stuffs, and that's why he wasn't practicing when he first transferred. And I know he even had to get kind of like reps to lawyers, basically, to help him out with that, to kind of force Tennessee's hand to release his transcripts and stuff. So that was part of it. But as the season went along, he'd been there long enough to where you're like, okay, well, if he's good, he should be playing now because they could use him.
I think it speaks to Bill's belief system. He's just like most talented guy. That's not what he's looking for. Like, do you fit what I'm trying to do? Do you see it like I need you to see it? Like, guys, I mean, we can all look back to that, what was it, 2018 or was it? No, it was 2017 with Eric Wren over Creed Humphrey. Looking back, there's just no question who that decision goes for, but Eric Wren knew everything. He could run it. He could do exactly what he wanted to, and Bill wasn't going to have Creed learn on the job. That just wasn't the way he saw that going. And so, like I said, I think it just speaks to Wanye just was not mentally prepared. And like you guys said, I think I was a little shocked when I finally saw him in an OU uniform. I was like, whoa, he doesn't look like an SEC starter. That looks a little sloppy and, just not right. So I probably also says a lot about the organization and general state of the Tennessee program he was part of.
Sure.
Which still to this day, I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Just a train wreck.
Yeah. I mean, anyway. All right. So anything else about spring football that you really stood out that you wanted to get out there before we talk a little bit about the recruiting side of things?
Daniel Parker was a kind of a joy to talk to. I don't know how much you got over there, Bob, but just
0.
Like, it's kind of a unique story. Played offensive tackle in high school, was recruited to Missouri as the defensive end, made the flip, was recruited by Joe John. So you can see the connection there and how, he ended up getting Oklahoma in his ear when he entered the transfer portal. But it seems like a guy that, and maybe they haven't had a whole lot of these guys. I don't know, but he seems like a guy that, would cut off his hand to win a football game. And I think that, there are certain aspects of a football program that you need guys like that. And, I'm not sitting here saying that he's going to win the Mackey Award or anything like that, but you can be sure if they need to pick up a yard, you could probably put Daniel Parker in there and he's going to knock somebody on their ass.
Yeah. And I mean, they've needed bodies. So, I mean, it was interesting kind of his story about how he was in limbo when Joe John Finley was in limbo about what he was going to do with the coaching situation, but seemed like a guy that really, really wanted to be at Oklahoma and was just kind of hoping it would work out that way.
No doubt. And I think if nothing else, he's a guy that seems like is kind of one of those non-bullshit guys, and just having him in the same room as a Braden Willis, probably somebody that rubs off really well on somebody like a Jason Llewellyn or somebody like a Caden Helms that maybe needs a little bit, not saying they need direction, but just kind of a mentor as far as learning the position, learning the ropes. even if it's somewhat new to him. So I think that tight end room is going to be really good for Joe John.
All right. So we kind of prepared everybody for it. Like, don't expect a bunch of commitments coming out of visit weekends. But I know, Josh, there's been a lot of positive feedback from all the players that visited Oklahoma over the weekend. And it seems like, Todd Bates is a name that always gets mentioned, but obviously Brent Venables. And I haven't seen one, not even negative, but I haven't seen one word that's just like, no one was just like, it was okay. Everybody seemed to be kind of, really impressed with everything going on in Oklahoma.
Honestly, over the visit weekends that we've covered now since early January, of these junior type visits since late January, I can only think of one player that wasn't just glowing about how it went and what it was. And that was a guy that I think really went and expecting to get an offer, and it didn't happen. And I think it was more about being disappointed about that. But in general, you're absolutely right. I mean, these guys just go on, and it's, it's funny because it is so much just the interactions they're having. Because when I try to get them to specify what it is, they really can't. They're like, and they're like, oh man, it's just so amazing, and the environment's so unique. And they're not just talking about, some guys do compare it to what had been in Norman, and then some guys are just talking about in general, just in all the visits they've taken, and they can't. I mean, they can't put it into words what makes it special, and I think it really is. It's just their ability to connect with the coaches. They feel like those coaches really care. I mean, when when I was talking to some guys about Todd Bates, and they're just like, he's just the most real guy I've ever been around. Like, just very, it's not, because sometimes when I talk to him, it's like, oh, he's really honest, or he's really direct, or he's really like, it's just, they feel like he is a guy that they know. Almost immediately, I feel like this is a guy I am comfortable with. I know I can tell him what my concerns are, what my thoughts are. He's going to tell me the same, and we can just kind of go from there. And I mean, it's, some guys are really good at connecting with mom and dad. Some guys are really good at connecting with the players. You rarely have a guy where everybody's kind of together on it. So I'm using Bates as an example, but that's clearly what Brent has built this staff to be, because you hear the same things about Chavis. You hear the same thing, I know it's kind of a funny joke on the corner. People love Ted Roof. Like, they really like Ted Roof a lot. And I know we've talked about him seeming like a really engaging and good guy. So that's what you get, is that these players love the coaches, and they love kind of the environment that's being created.
I think they're just so engaged during the visits. I get a feeling that, not that coaches checked out on their previous staff, like during junior day, but a lot of just presentations and stuff like that didn't require that one-on-one attention that the coaches and that those recruits probably felt they needed to have. So you'd have these presentations, and then they'd kind of go away for a bit, and then they'd come back. Where it feels like even if they have the presentations now, they're still totally engaged with what's going on the entire time.
I think that's fair. And to avoid it being, well, look what the last staff didn't do, there's a lot more people there. Like, if Brent's talking to, let's say, Anthony Hill, the 5-star linebacker, well, he can peel away from Anthony, and guess who's there to talk to him? Caleb Kelly, a former 5-star linebacker that's played at OU and really has a passion for the university and is part of this SOUL program. Like, there is always someone there so they're not just sitting there staring at their phones or being idle and having time to, do whatever it is that, that kids do. They are engaged, like you said, Bob. And I think that's a great point, that's part of what Brent has built with this bigger staff, is that because Brent can't deal with, they had like 35 guys on campus last weekend. He can't be with all of them all the time, but he can be around enough and really focus on the guys he wants to. And at the same time, the guys who aren't getting all that time, or even the guys who are, when they are alone, not alone, when they aren't with Brent or aren't with their coordinators or whatever it may be, they have someone else who is talking to them and helping them kind of build that bridge and feel even more comfortable. So it's not just my position coach. I know I'm really comfortable with Coach Kelly, or Josh Norman, or, whoever it may be. You just go down the list of all the support staff that's there now. There is a very different level of communication as to where, under the old staff, it would be a lot of, my position coach, I love that guy, I know that guy. And then once they walk away, I don't really have any, connection anymore. We covered that with a couple months ago when I talked about Kobe McKenzie, had spoken more to Lincoln Riley after he left Oklahoma than he ever did while Lincoln was at OU. So that there's just some interesting kind of ability to connect on a deeper level.
It was like everybody was waiting in the waiting office at the doctor's office, and the doctor's office was Lincoln Riley's office. Everybody just kind of waiting in the foyer out there, the foyer, like waiting to get maybe and possibly your number's going to be called, and if not, damn it, you'll have to come back next week.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I don't even want to say anything. If I say anything, it's like, you're shitting. Why are you still shitting on Lincoln Riley? If I say anything positive, it's like, why are you still defending him? Like,
well, it's hard to not. It's hard to talk about the current state of the program right now and not base it off of what we know or what we thought we knew of what was happening previously.
And somebody, I can't remember which one, it was one of you said something about, it's not to say that the old staff was mailing it in, and I certainly don't think 9 of the 10 members were, but being at Elite 11 last week, and I had some interesting conversations with some area high school coaches, and it was interesting hearing how different some of the campus visits were last year as compared to years past. Like the level of organization wasn't the same it had been. There was a little more kind of fluidity to what was going on, and the time wasn't regimented in the same way. And maybe, and again, it's just like us. We can look back now and say, well, we should have seen this, we should have seen that. Like, the coaches can do the same thing. Like, they can kind of make storylines that they didn't notice at the time, and now they think, well, that must be connected. And it doesn't have to be. I'm just saying it's interesting to hear those things from guys who have been going to Norman for, 10, 15 years and really know the lay of the land, that last year for a lot of reasons just felt weird all along.
Well, you mentioned Jackson Arnold. You got a chance to go see him at the Elite 11, and he's going through, right? He's made it to the national competition.
Yep, he earned an invitation on Sunday. Yep.
So, just kind of your impressions of talking to him. Kind of, we've always said it. It's great to have a quarterback in a class because back to our discussion we had last week about taking commitments, not taking commitments, and building momentum. But nothing builds momentum in a class like having a highly rated quarterback.
Absolutely, and I had a chance, for those that didn't really follow the thread or whatever. I mean, there were 2 of OU's major primary receiver targets that were there, along with one of their primary defensive back targets, Peyton Bowen, who is Jackson Arnold's, of course, teammate at Denton Guyer. The 2 receivers being the wide receiver commitment, Ashton Cozart and Mikhail Harrison-Pilot. Now, I talked to Harrison Pilot about that. Like, how meaningful is that to have a quarterback, kind of that is highly regarded, going to go to the Elite 11. I mean, and, knowing that that's a guy that not only is good, but him. And he was very honest, like that means a lot. Like, I have a connection with him. I know him. Like, we don't have to kind of build a rapport. Like, there's familiarity there to begin with. So, there's just, you're right. There's no greater indication. And in my conversation with Jackson, which due to technical difficulties didn't get to really get run the way we wanted it to, But
don't bring up your technical difficulties. I'm sitting right here. All right. Don't.
You know what? I didn't do anything wrong.
Don't make me start a drunken post on the board. Just
damn it.
Just going after you. I mean, that we've had enough of that, haven't we?
Damn it. I drunk. Whatever last night was. If you weren't on the corner, you missed it. It was a truly grand moment in the corner's history. But no, as far as Jackson himself, I really liked what I saw. Now, the thing that you could tell was Denton Guyer runs a very specific offense, a lot of run pass option. And when he's doing that stuff and he's, reading, the end and he's making decisions that he is familiar with, that dude, his throws are on point. His footwork's outstanding. Like, he is well drilled in what he knows. At the same time, you could watch him, and I overheard him talking to some of the position coaches where he's talking about working under center and dropping back. He's counting his steps like a young guy. Like, he just hasn't done it much. So there are things where he's still very raw and still working on his game. Now, Jeff Lebby doesn't run a ton under center, so I don't think it's going to be some huge thing. Like, you can understand why he would be excited. But even if he does, I mean, that's something Jackson Arnold will work on. But, his timing is really good. His delivery is outstanding, very repeatable, very quick release. Has more than enough arm to make any throw you want. There's clearly, like I said, when he's timed and he's on rhythm, it's very natural. When I compare that to what I see on tape, I like what comes together, because on tape, there were times when he's kind of running for his life, and he is always so calm. Like, even when I'm talking about when he's in drops and, in a 5-step drop, from under center, where he's clearly not comfortable. He hasn't done that a lot. He doesn't know it real well. He still looks under control. It still doesn't look chaotic. You can just tell the timing's not quite right. He just doesn't have it where he's going to sit on that 5th step and then boom, I'm firing. I know where I'm going with it. There's not that same familiarity, but he didn't do anything to hurt my impression of him. I thought he was every bit worthy of the Elite 11 invite. Really threw some great balls. Really looks comfortable throwing the out. I could go on and talk about all the stuff I like, but Jackson Arnold's a very good player. I absolutely get why he was a priority for Jeff Lebby when he took the job. And, like I mentioned earlier, talking to him and his mom and his dad, I don't think they expected Oklahoma to happen as fast as it did. Like, they really just fell in love with OU, Norman. They'd never been up there before he went to visit, and it sounds like almost from getting there and sitting down with Jeff Lebby, they knew what they were going to do.
Much bigger kid than maybe I was expecting.
He looked like a man. That was what stood out to me. Did. I mean, like, just a big, thick kid.
He has, frame-wise, he's a lot of Baker Mayfield vibes. Like, very just kind of thick through, he's almost 200 pounds. He's a big, sturdy dude, about 6'1". Honestly, I say Baker, when I watch his game and what his skills are and the things that he really excels at, I see a lot of Case McCoy like that. I'm sorry, not Case, Colt McCoy. Yeah, I was like, well, that doesn't sound right. No, I see a lot of Colt McCoy. That's who he really reminds me of. That same kind of, just like I said, like always under control, always very much comfortable with whatever is happening, keeps his eyes downfield very well, doesn't try to do too much. He'll take what you give him. I like Jackson a lot. I think we've got him in number 66 in the country right now. And I think that's a completely valid ranking. He's a top 75 guy in the country. And, like I said, I like not only what he brings from a talent perspective, but he is doing plenty to help the rest of his class grow.
By the way, Colt McCoy, chasing that Chase Daniel elite status as best man to, worst. I don't know. Is that the guy that basically is making the most money in the NFL by just staying out of games?
Best career
he might
for
not
all
be
men.
On Chase's level, but they're definitely on the same, like, the what?
I think Colt plays more too.
Yeah, he's been forced to play more than Chase
plays.
Daniel.
Oh, he's had moments. He's had stretches of years that were pretty good. Yep. Oh, if you talked about a guy that's a perennially, there we go, thought of backup.
My God, just words.
Oh, I should have called you in on that one, Eddie. If I was going to talk about a guy like that, and I said, man, I know my starter is going to go down week 10 to week 12, and I've got to have somebody. He might be the first guy I would want. He can win you a couple of football games. He's not going to carry your team or be he shouldn't be your starter if you're trying to make the playoffs. But I got to get a couple wins on a good team. He can do that.
He was Kyler's backup last year, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And will be this year.
Okay.
Yeah, he re-signed.
Well, you're just assuming where Kyler's going to be, huh? Okay, Bob.
Or that he's going to win the job out of camp. It's all
Hey, settle down, Matt Ryan. All right.
Oh,
The what?
I said, settle down, Matt Ryan.
Now that we have a legitimate quarterback, I'm feeling pretty frisky. So
I think it's going to work out really well for the Colts. I love that move.
I did too.
And
I
that
didn't think
quote
we
was
had to give
so
up much.
damning. We knew we had to move on.
Yeah, Carson Wentz must just suck. Just as a human, as a football player, just all the above. Just not a good guy.
He comes off to me as I get it, like Kyrie Irving, being an anti-vaxxer, he's got convictions. He does say some dumb stuff, but at least you can tell he puts thought into it. Might be, he might not be the smartest guy that's ever existed. I think my read is that Carson Wentz is the dumbest truther that's ever existed. Not only is he an anti-vaxxer, but he might just be legitimately stupid.
Carson Wentz might be Q.
No, we know who Q is. Q's he's readily out there. It's not like the Anon part of it is Q started it, and there is a guy, I think he's in a wheelchair, but he turned against QAnon when it became what it became.
Yeah, and he's the governor of Texas. His name's Greg Abbott.
Oh, God.
That's a joke.
It's not Ron DeSantos? Is he more Abbott than Abbott?
Ron DeSantos is the cousin of Ron Santos that was the Cubs third baseman.
Is that not Florida's governor, Ron DeSantis?
No, it's DeSantis or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Is it Rick?
Rick might be.
Yeah, it's Rick. Yeah, I think it's Rick. But yeah, they are.
No, I think it's Ron. I think it's Ron DeSantis. There's a Rick? I don't know. That ends the
We just like making fun of politics. We really don't know anything about it.
That's a fact.
So anyway.
I'm not here to correct. I'm not sure if it's Ron or Rick.
No, it's Ron.
I really
It's
don't
Ron.
know.
It's Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, it's Ron.
It's Ron.
Yeah, Bob
wrong.
lives
I
to
don't know
correct
why.
people, and he's just staying silent.
Damn it, Bob.
Nobody
I don't
knew.
know.
You're here to correct our political bullshit.
I guess
too.
he doesn't care. He does. He really doesn't. And he doesn't care if we care. All right. So I know, Bob, you've been breaking some basketball news lately as well. Your guy that you followed, since it seems like he's been in junior high, you broke it yesterday that he is returning to Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, you start looking at the transfer portal and you see OU being involved with a lot of different, players, but not in their top 3 or 4, just hey, they've talked to me. They're one of the 20, 30 schools that have talked to me. So you start wondering, how's that going to shake out with the current roster? And now I'm really starting to wonder, because Bijan Cortez and CJ Nolan are both definitely coming back, talking to sources connected to both of them. And it almost wasn't even like a debate. It wasn't oh man, he was thinking about leaving, now he's going to come back, or he was maybe told by OU he might have to look elsewhere, but he's going to come back. There's no doubt, and the people that I talked to connected to both of them, that they were definitely fired up to come back for Moser's second season, for their second season. So then you start wondering, you have to hit the portal for at least a couple guys. But if Mo Gibson decides to stay, which we now know he's either going to go pro or come back to OU, there's no portal option. You start looking at the list, there aren't that many spots. I think 2-3 weeks ago we were worried about having to go through 5 or 6 different. It could only be 2 or 3 at max now.
it's kind of weird to say it, Bob, but and I still think that we both agree that maybe like a Rick Asanza or somebody, AK, somebody that you go, you're probably not going to get on the court here. Maybe it'd be best for everybody involved to look in a different direction. But it's almost like maybe like the assistant coaches there might be more of them leaving to get, better opportunities than actual players going into the portal.
Yeah, that's something, the KT Turner news, that kind of happened last week, where it looks like Louisville might be his destination under new coach Kenny Payne. That's something that's been brewing, still hasn't been announced, and really it's kind of just gone off the radar. I don't know if like Payne wants to announce his entire staff at once and then it comes back, but it's something that picked up a lot of steam last week, and now it's kind of dropped off. But then something happened almost right before, basically right before we started recording. Sacramento State head coach opening being linked to David Patrick. And so we knew when Porter brought this staff together, you looked at Turner, you looked at Patrick, a lot of reason to believe that you weren't going to hold on to these guys for a very long time because they're too good at what they've been able to do, that eventually something else is going to be calling them. But I don't know if anyone thought within the first year you could be trying to replenish two of those guys, and that maybe you're not having to replenish anything with your roster in the portal, but all of a sudden you got to go back to that assistant coach pool and try to find guys that once again will fit what Moser is looking to try to do.
With what's coming back, you're probably not going to have to get much in the backcourt, but it is still a priority that they need. If you don't believe in a Rick Asanza, they need to get. It's almost priority that they find somebody, and I guess in a picture perfect world, it'd be a big guy. It'd be a guy that can, play the actual five.
Yeah, but you got to be careful. You don't need a David McCormick like five that Kansas has. That's not what Porter Moser wants to run. That's not the type of big. So that's what gets kind of curious about when you're trying to find that post guy. You think, you just look at numbers. Oh, he's 6'10". He averaged 14 points and 8 rebounds for such and such school. You got to go after him. No, you got to know what he does well, what he would bring to Porter Moser's system before you can make that type of leap. And if you only have one or two spots, that will at least allow Moser and the staff, whatever staff is left or hired, to be selective as to how they're going to go about that. Not just jump at the first guy that they see and try to bring them in, but they can take their time and really try to nail that one or two guys that they know can help the team best.
All right, Josh has been punished enough between trash talk about his passed away mother last night to basketball talk and Porters and all that stuff. So
basketball was way more painful.
Oh my God! Wow. Have you banned BM Smith? Is he on the banning block?
I didn't. No, like that.
Is he like on your list?
The
like
thread is locked or anything? It's still there, right?
It was too glorious to lock. I mean, every single one of us were in the crosshairs at some point last night.
I'm even going to make a basketball reference.
A soccer thread. It was a thread about soccer, and somehow it turned into, well, you never believed in Baker Mayfield, Murdoch. I don't have any proof, but you said it. Like, okay.
It all started because someone was teasing soccer fans about hoping that the U.S. would lose last night, so they didn't make the World Cup. They didn't have to hear any more about soccer, blah, 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 blah. Fine, whatever. I don't know how you get through about 2 years of being a legitimate soccer fan before you just stop caring about that. Like, if you don't want to watch it, cool, I don't care. I tried to convert Carey for a while, and then I was like, I don't care. Like, you watch it, you hate it, I don't care. I'm going to enjoy it.
You were your own worst enemy in that, by the way.
100%. 100%. Like, I know it now. I was like, see it.
Okay, there's books devoted to these teams that you're reading, and you have like a full bookshelf of stuff about the Arsenal. Like, I'm never going to be that into this. Like, you're an idiot.
When we get the podcast going on YouTube or whatever, I will show you the books behind my desk right now, sitting behind me. There's several Arsenal books included in my little collection, no doubt.
That'll be your setup.
Yeah, along with a dog, the Encyclopedia of Dogs. I mean, we've got some real bangers over here. But yeah, no, it just started with me like he's trolling you because BMS got mad, and then I was like, why are you letting him do this? Like, you're advocating for a troll. He was wrong about Brent Venables being the head coach and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, whoa, what? What does that have to do with anything we're talking about? And then basically it just proceeded to whoever came into the thread, he remembered someone angering him. That person angering him.
I think
why.
just from tweeting about the thread, he decided, I saw your little tweet, Murdoch. You never believed in Baker.
I mean, if anybody's going to take Baker on the chin, I think it has to be me. Because I wanted Cody Thomas, and I was very vocal about that.
Somebody did dig up a practice report from like 4 years ago.
Which I didn't think read bad for you at all, Kerry. Like, you were very, like, he's looked good. He's been good. Like, it wasn't.
I said he was better than Trevor.
Yeah, I didn't feel like it was. Now, I will say, you were a little more Cody Thomas positive than I remembered. So, kudos to you, buddy. That was.
Yeah, that really worked out well for me, didn't it?
Yeah. Hey, big winner. We can go down on the Titanic together.
Oh, God. All right. That'll do it for this week. I know we got some Zooms for other sports that people want to get on. So good time for us to get out of here. Thanks to Dead Soxy. Don't forget SoonerScoopStore.com. Go check it out. We'll have some new hats in there coming up next week for those of you that, like maybe the trucker style because we haven't had any of those in the store. So those are coming up. So be on the lookout for those. And we'll be back again next week. Spring football still going, leading up to the spring game on April 23rd. And hope to see a lot of you guys there. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you back again next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast from SoonerScoop.com.